Yo. What's up, people? It's your boy Chris, and you'll never guess where I'm at. But here's a hint. This is the stage where next week, I'm gonna be performing for Owensboro's Got Talent. Now, I made it through the first audition, coasted through the judges round, and now I'm here, where next week, it's gonna be my big stage debut. I'll be right out there, singing my song in front of an entire crowd of people just staring at me, listening to me hit every note, just waiting for my voice to crack. Oh. Sounds like I'm probably gonna need a little bit of courage. Courage is being brave enough to do what you should do, even when you're afraid. Well, there's no time like the present, so let's see what it feels like out there. All right. Well, maybe I should probably think about this for a second. I mean, what's the big deal? There's no audience out there, so here we go. What's that over there? Oh, a fire extinguisher. Oh, yes. ABC, yes, a fire extinguisher. Yes, we need that. Oh, tape, it's tape. We got tape. Whew. Is it hot in here? Or is it just me? Oh, whew. Feels hot. Am I sweaty? Do I look sweaty? It's a B. Oh, I feel so relieved. All right, I'm stalling. I don't know what it is. If I can't go on that stage when it's empty, then I don't know how I'm gonna perform when there's people in the audience. Impossible means it can't be done. There's zero chance. Nada. No way. It's completely and utterly hopeless. In today's story, Moses and the Israelites were in an impossible position. But when God's involved, impossible takes on a whole new meaning. I got this, Chris. I got this. Besides, the stage isn't even that scary. Yeah, It looks great from back here. Yeah, definitely.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. And now for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Exodus, chapters 13 and 14.
God's people, the Israelites, had worked as slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years. But God sent Moses to confront the Egyptian Pharaoh and demand freedom. And though Moses was not a good public speaker, he listened to God. He faced down Pharaoh. And after God sent a series of terrible plagues, like turning the rivers to blood, hordes of frogs, and finally, the death of every oldest son in Egypt, Pharaoh reached his limit.
Enough! Get out of here. Leave. Go.
So God's people left quickly, or as quickly as over 1 million people with their animals could move. They left by night and later camped out by the edge of the desert. Now, we don't know who many of the Israelites were, but we do know many of them were children. So we can imagine that there was one young girl named Tikva, who was traveling with her grandmother, Devorah.
Safta, where are we going?
The Lord Himself has promised us a home.
How will we get there?
You see that column of cloud ahead? Moses has said God Himself is in the cloud, guiding us.
And the flames we see at night, is God in them too?
I believe it.
The cloud is moving again.
Let's get ready. Gather the goats.
So Tikva herded their 3 goats together, and Devorah packed up all their belongings, and they set off again with the slow-moving group, traveling all day long. Late in the afternoon, they noticed the bright sun gleaming against a vast sea far ahead.
The Red Sea.
It's so much bigger than the Nile.
Around them, others began to set up camp for the night, but Tikva and her grandmother pushed onto the shore, and by the time they reached the sea, they were near the front of the crowd.
I can't see the other side. How deep is it?
They both stared out across the water.
Very deep, I should think. Would you like to wade?
Tikva shivered. She couldn't swim.
No, I don't think so.
As Tikva turned away from the water, she spotted a rise in the land ahead. a tall man with wild white hair and a thick staff stood in the center of a group of men, all looking back across the desert.
Is that Moses?
I think so.
While they were watching, something changed. While Moses still appeared calm, the men around him appeared to point and shout. Others ran down the hill.
Pharaoh's changed his mind. He's coming after us with all his chariots and horses and troops.
Tikva strained her eyes to see across the desert. Sure enough, a big cloud of dust was blooming.
Where will we go? There's nowhere but the water.
I believe God will help us.
Will Moses tell us what to do?
Let's find out.
Together, they ran over to the place where Moses stood. A panicked crowd had already gathered.
Why did you bring us out here to die?
It would have been better to stay in Egypt as slaves.
Tikva glanced back at the growing dust cloud. It had been so terrible working so hard for Pharaoh. Even Tikva and her friends carried bricks as an Egyptian master shouted at them. Moses held up his rod and called out over the crowd.
Don't be afraid. Stand firm. The Lord will save you today. He will fight for you. Just be still.
Moses waved the people away with his rod and stalked toward the water's edge.
What is he doing?
Talking with God, I think.
I wish he'd hurry.
As dusk settled, Tikva and Devorah settled down together with their goats.
Look at that tall cloud. It's moved to the back of the camp.
God's standing between us and the Egyptians.
Tikva stood, shifting her weight back and forth. Everyone around her was restless too. At last, she spotted Moses' brother Aaron hurrying across the water's edge. Devorah stepped forward.
Please, tell us what your brother is doing.
God told Moses to hold his walking stick over the Red Sea. God will gain glory because of all this.
But what's going to happen?
Watch.
Even as she asked the question, Tikva could feel a strong wind rising. It whipped the water into a wild froth. And then, slowly, the water began to part in the middle, right before the spot where Moses was standing.
Wow.
As night fell, Tikva and Devorah watched in amazement. The wind was pushing the water into two great walls with a dry path in the middle. They could hear the distant sounds of Pharaoh's army, but the cloud kept God's people separated from the Egyptians.
God made a way through the water.
Moses called out to the Israelites.
Hurry, we must walk through.
Tikva and Devorah hurried to join the caravan passing into the sea.
What if the water falls on us?
Do you really think that will happen?
Tikva took a deep breath.
God pushed the water back. He'll keep us safe.
As they reached the water's edge, the strong wind whipped their hair. The water rose in high walls towering above Tikva, and despite what she said, her stomach was in knots. She closed her eyes and took her first step in between the waters. Nothing happened. As she opened her eyes, Tikva found herself standing safely between the walls of water.
The water isn't falling.
Together, Tikva and Devorah and all the Israelites marched right through the heart of the sea. But just before all of God's people made it across, a new sound struck terror.
Pharaoh's coming after us.
Tikva felt panic grip her again.
How could God bring us through just to let them get us?
As dawn neared, though, Tikva heard something new. Aaron called out over the crowd.
God has jammed the wheels of their chariots. The Egyptians are stuck in the middle of the Red Sea.
Just beyond Aaron, Tikva saw Moses at the water's edge. As the very last Israelite made it through, Moses raised his rod again.
God told him to reach out his hand over the water again.
As the sun burst over the horizon, those gigantic walls of water began to collapse. The Egyptians, with their horses and the chariots, were all washed away. Not one was left.
Wow.
Everything about the last day had seemed impossible. Tikva was grateful that God had given her the courage to take that first step between the waters, even in the face of fear.
Okay, so maybe it isn't impossible for me to perform in front of people. I mean, nothing's impossible when it comes to God. Let's talk about Moses for a second. Moses' people, the Israelites, were slaves in the land of Egypt. So God chose Moses to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. After a little convincing and a few plagues thrown in there, Pharaoh set the Israelites free. And just when they thought they were safe, Pharaoh changed his mind and sent his army after them. The Israelites were terrified. And then, the whole parting of the Red Sea thing. So yeah, God can do the impossible. But still, can you imagine stepping out with a big wall of water on this side of you and then another big wall of water on this side of you? Oh, that first step took a lot of courage. You might have some fears that you think are impossible to overcome, but if God can part a sea in half, if he can create the universe, if he can bring Jesus back from the dead, then I think you'll be okay. But you still have to have the courage to take that first step though. So, what do you say? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the dark? Turn your nightlight off for one night only and take a flashlight to bed, but only use it when you need it. You afraid of roller coasters? Well, try starting out with the smaller ones. The ones that go upside down, we can worry about those later. Are you afraid of dogs? Well, if you're afraid of dogs or any pets, you should take a trip down to your local pet store and just watch the animals. No matter what you're afraid of, ask God to help you have courage. He does impossible better than anyone. Here's the one thing to remember. You can do what you should, even when things seem impossible. Guess that means me too, huh? Here we go. Oh, I did it. I'm on the stage. I did it. I can almost feel the audience right here. It's crazy. Hey audience, how you doing? Let's go. This is so exciting. All right, you guys, I'm out.